I want to take you back because you mentioned your dad, and we'd be remiss here if we didn't talk about him because, a lot of people may remember that he was a big promoter in that area, but he was also a very accomplished wrestler. So the business was deep in his veins, and a lot of people don't know about that part of his life. He really had a very successful career in the ring.
He did, and it really started, Sean, back when he was a young boy and he lost his first eye. It was kicked out accidentally, and that sounds pretty rough, but, we're talking way back, and he was from a very poor family, and you're talking about my dad was born, 1912, let's go back, and you go through depression, but he had a poor life, and so they took his eye at the age of 12, and he loved sports so much, but the only sport that would take him was wrestling. He loved ball. He loved every sport. I mean, I grew up with listening on Saturdays. It was 3 radios and 2 televisions on, and it was all sports. And so then wrestling that he did in high school at Central in Tulsa, Oklahoma, went on to take him to Stillwater and put him through there. He majored in journalism with a minor in psychology. Lord, that minor in psychology was killing me because he knew everything,
You think he needed a spoon to do
that? Anyway, he was 3-time NCAA champion. Wrestling, his love, his true compassion was where you find the stars, and that was in the collegiate ranks. And so that's where it started, because he had fully thought, hey, this is over when I graduate, because he was going to work as a sports writer and had a job at the Tulsa World. Well, that didn't last, but probably, I think, time like 6 months, because there was a promoter here named Sam Avey that he was doing a lot of other things. He was from Canada, but he was also promoting hockey and did stage shows. But wrestling was something he was getting into. But he wanted to have an authenticity to it by hiring this local guy that had quite a name for himself at Oklahoma A&M at the time. Now it's Oklahoma State University. Yeah. And that's how he started, because the promoter came in there, Sam came in there and asked him, he said, Leroy, what are you making at the paper? And my dad said $25 a month. Well, that's pretty good money for 1933, as I understand. And Mr. Avey said, how would you like to make $25 a week? My dad left the paper, and there's a book in Tulsa that came out, the first 100 years of the Tulsa World, and he's in it. And about this story, how how some people stayed and this person started here, and then this is what he developed to. So that's how he did it, and that's how he knew. Stu Hart was like family to me. I mean, the names, the Von Erichs, that's who I grew up around. They were my. I went to school and I had those friends, but my family was always the wrestling, because that's the families always got together. I can always remember I had Italian food before anybody else did. I had pizza because an Italian wrestler would come over and cook for my father. The Spaniards, I mean, it was a rich life to be around those kind of people. And I say those kind of people, I mean that varied group of people where, you're learning Spanish here and just different lifestyles for just an only child like me. I mean, I loved it. It was because they were my friends. A lot of the older ones, they were always nice to me. I had teddy bears. Heck, I knew Ted. I wasn't aware of it, but I knew Ted DiBiase because of his father was in and working for my dad, and he also held the junior heavyweight title belt, which my dad eventually retired with, because at the time, as we were talking about, my dad had wrestled and carried the junior heavyweight belt up until his accident in 1951, which is still all before me. This is still stuff that I've either read or that I had privilege of him telling me, because he didn't really like to talk about those times. It was, I'm sure, a devastating time. It didn't happen overnight. He said it was within a period of a year that he lost his sight. And, you think somebody that's on top of his game, a marriage, his marriage was crumbling. He was losing his eyesight pretty rapidly, and he had gone up to Johns Hopkins to try to get it saved, and the technology just wasn't there. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, and I even recently saw a newspaper article where he and my dad's first wife were boarding the plane going to the hospital. So, those things you think, wow, and that was before me. Mm-hmm. And you think, God, that man stepping on that plane with so much hope. And he would tell me later on years, he said, I don't even think about it. As the technology came, he said, I don't want to be disappointed like that again. And so, but he never acted like a blind person to me. That was the other thing that he talked about diversify. And as I got older, I understood what he meant, is because thank God he had his journalism degree that he never, he loved to write. He wrote every sports story that was about the wrestlers or the card, and he knew what to do. He would write the story of the impending card, and also write the story of what had happened of the night's matches. And then he would take it. Of course, we were with him, or one of his guys. Daddy had a couple of henchmen, and they would take it up to the sports editor. And he wasn't paying for it, but there it was, the copy. There was, and he knew the role and how it worked, and if it was there for them, they probably would run it. And they did. So there was all these things that were building up of how my dad had told me about don't always put your eggs in one basket. And as I was young, I didn't understand, but as I got older, I've done about a little bit of everything, just so I would always, like he said, is you got something to fall back on. And this was never, ever, like I said, the wrestling, I thought I had to be a part of it. I thought I had to marry into it because that was what it was. Yeah. And then to do what I ended up doing, and then to ask my dad, I was like, well, what do you think? And he's like, he was almost speechless. He said, well, kid, it sounds like you know what you're doing. No, I'm just going with what I've heard all my life and what I think the people would like to hear. It wasn't about Mike. It was about, again, defying what people had always told me all my life, that a woman had no place in this business, and I felt that I did. Even if I didn't use my body, I still respected what they did with theirs, but I also respected what they were doing, and that's kind of hard to find and define with somebody that doesn't understand it. And, respect goes a long way, and vice versa. It just, I read about, like, all the women later on that maybe they played some jokes on them, and I never experienced that. Because they saw me pick my own bags up. They saw me, for the first 2 years I was starting with Vince on national television, that car was just for me. I was not meant for the wrestlers or anybody else. So I was driving by myself for those 2 years and making the shows, and so there was times like, am I really doing the right thing? And you knew you were, you knew it. Just sometimes it'd get kind of lonesome. But in the long run, once I got around people, and I knew the job that I was doing, and I think about these kids today. I didn't have any GPS. I would go to these towns. I'd never been to Boston, but I had learned how to read a map. And I had people that weren't so friendly to, I guess I have an accent, maybe a little twang, but I could go to Boston And I would get in there, and I would be ready to rent a car. And first of all, we got to get over the hump of your first name, which is Michael. And they'd be looking at me, they go, where is he?
Yeah.
This is he. So you get through that, and they want to know the story. And then they want to tell you, I'm trying to get to Worcester, Massachusetts. Well, next thing I know, I'm on the road thinking they're sending me to Worcester, but I'm looking at the map, and hell, they were sending me to Salem, which is totally north. So yeah, I can remember doing and learning the stuff by myself. And I went into one place off the interstate, and I was asking, God, I'm thirsty. And I said, hey, y'all have any Dr. Pepper? Not even looking at the menu or whatever. And the guy looked at me. He goes, well, around here. So I'm like, okay, here we go. And we don't know if it's something that you pour in your head or somebody that you call when you're sick. So I thought, okay, we're back east, and I need to rephrase this. So I said, well, whatever you've got to drink, can I have it? And so those kind of things I got without having to be around the wrestlers. I was just learning where to go and how to get there and be on time.